Welcome to the Indiana 4-H Clover Call podcast, where our goal is to share information about the people and programs that make the Indiana 4-H Youth Development Program such an important part of our communities. We welcome youth and adult 4-H volunteers, 4-H youth and their families, extension professionals, and any others who are interested in providing positive opportunities for youth. We thank you for joining us for this episode, which begins now.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Clover Call podcast. I am Julia Miller, the 4-H educator in Stark County. Today, I'm excited to be joined by 5 of our state Indiana 4-H specialists. I'd like to thank all of you guys for joining us today to discuss the state 4-H program and your roles. We're going to get started with our first specialist, Tony Carroll. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself and share your area of specialty?
Julia, thanks for having us on. My name is Tony Carroll, and I work as a program specialist in the State 4-H office. And my areas of expertise fall on the lines of the career development events, the judging contests that are traditionally known by 4-H and FFA members. I also oversee the non-animal 4-H curriculum and the projects at State Fair. And then also the main event that I oversee is 4-H Roundup, Band, and Chorus during the summertime.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Tony. So with these events, you mentioned 4-H Band, Roundup, and Chorus. You work on those. What are some of those activities that you do? Can you describe those a little more for our listeners today?
Absolutely. And so with the 4-H Band and Chorus, that's a great opportunity for youth who have some musical background or want to learn more about their musical background and focus on those skills. But I work with Professor Matthew Conaway in Purdue Musical Organizations, and he is the instructor for our band program. And so we have youth that come from all over the state of Indiana on a Saturday, and then they will practice with each other. And by Monday night, they're able to give this great performance on Monday evening. And it sounds, for most high school bands, they work for an entire semester trying to put together a program. But here with our 4-H band on the state 4-H side, we're able to do it within 3 days, and it's just a magnificent program. Similarly, we do the same thing with 4-H Chorus. They'll come together on a Saturday and they'll work to put together a show choir type performance on Tuesday evening at 4-H Roundup. And during that time, Megan Ferris is the music director at Western Boone Schools. And so she has experience and knowledge and works with those youth to be able to do that performance. For 4-H Roundup, with faculty and staff across all 10 colleges at Purdue University, to be able to put on some career exploration classes. And so during 4-H Roundup, we have about 500 to 600 youth attend campus for a 3-day conference, and it gives them a chance to stay in the residence halls, participate in classes similar to what a college student would be. But more importantly, it's that first out-of-county 4-H experience for many, so it provides them a chance to build their network. And most importantly, they're able to do some hands-on activities within the laboratories at Purdue to think about some of the careers that might be there for them.
Those sound like some great opportunities for our youth. Is this open to only 4-H members or those outside of the 4-H program?
It can be anyone who wants to join, and they do not have to already be in 4-H. Obviously, if they're going to join, we're going to get them involved in the 4-H program, but it's open to anyone. And 4-H Roundup is grades 7, 8, 9, and then for band and chorus is grades 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Great. So it's a different kind of 4-H experience for the youth in our state. Now, I have seen the band and the chorus firsthand, and it is amazing what they can accomplish in those few days that they're there. You also mentioned career development events and that you work with non-animal projects. How do you interact with the volunteers or educators and youth through those projects?
Projects go, a lot of that interaction comes during state fair time. I get the opportunity to live at the Indiana State Fair for 27 days. And that's the best part of my job. A lot of people cringe when they hear that, but I really enjoy it. During that time, that's when I really get to interact with the 4-H volunteers as they come through the 4-H exhibit hall, Centennial Hall, and explore the exhibits in the agriculture horticulture building, seeing all the talents and the skills that our youth have done throughout the year and those accomplishments. And during that time, I'm able to interact with those volunteers, answer questions that they have, find out from them their suggestions for improving the programs. And, it's oftentimes, the project exhibit requirements that we have, those are often revised based upon suggestions made by volunteers.
Great. But the Indiana State Fair and working in the exhibit building is definitely a lot of fun. Many kids I know over the years have become EHW or exhibit hall worker. I was one of those myself as a growing up, and that was definitely one of my best experiences as a youth. I loved doing that. That's a great opportunity for youth to do.
The Indiana State Fair allows us to hire about 60 to 70 youth during the summertime for that short term 3 weeks of the fair. Actually, it's about 4 weeks for the fair. And those youth are divided up into teams, and they are responsible for check-in process, getting the exhibits put on display. They work with the judges during the evaluation process. During the fair, once the fair opens, then they're assigned some leadership opportunities. They also, walk floors and interact with the general public to answer questions, serving as ambassadors for our 4-H program and as the Indiana State Fair ambassadors as well. And the fair is finished, then they're also responsible for the checkout of those exhibits and getting everything cleaned up and put away and ready for the following year. So it's a great experience. They're also responsible for all the record keeping that goes on with the nearly 10,000 exhibits that we have.
Great life skill building for those youth and social time with others throughout the state.
It is. It's a true workforce preparation program that we have.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Tony. What would you see your vision would be for the Indiana 4-H program where is it going in the future?
I would hope that in the future we can expand, we can get beyond the stereotype that 4-H is just for ag kids and just for farm kids. It's historically been meat and potatoes of our program. We know that 4-H offers a whole vast array of educational opportunities to every child that's living in the state of Indiana. I would hope that we could continue to grow our program, to see some new faces within our 4-H program, to make our 4-H program one that is simple for everyone, not a complicated program, but it's one that youth can come to and have fun. And at the end of the day, after they've finished having the fun and experiencing that educational moment, that's when the light bulb clicks on that, oh gosh, hey, I actually learned something about robotics, or I learned something about science, or I learned something about foods, or I learned something about animals, those kinds of things. And then whatever those skills are that they learned about that particular subject matter, it helps them with the organizational skills at school and helps them become a real productive citizen as they get involved in civic engagement and those things.
Great. I agree that we have new places that we can go and reach new audiences. Thank you, Tony. So to wrap up your little segment, a fun question. If you could have dinner with one person, famous in history or still alive, who would it be and why?
I've thought about that since you posed that to us, Julia, and I think it would either be Harry S. Truman. I love when I take youth to national trips in DC. One of my favorite museums, monuments to visit is the Harry S. Truman Memorial. The other one is Smith Lever, Senator Smith and Senator Lever, who actually wrote the act that allows us to be able to have the extension service. And so I think it would be kind of cool to have dinner with Senator Smith and Lever to find out if we're actually meeting the vision that they had, or if we've expanded beyond that vision, or blown them away, or what's going on, or if they just need to slap us upside the head and say, nope, that's really not what we had intended. This is what we think you need to be doing. So, but hopefully, when I have dinner with them, they would just be blown away by what's going on within Purdue Extension and nationally.
Awesome. I never would have thought about that. And I like that idea to meet with Smith and Lever, even Harry S. Truman. Those are great, Tony. I thank you for being here today and hearing about how you help with the state 4-H program and help develop our youth. Our next specialist is going to be Kara Harbison. Kara, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your area of specialty?
I'm Harbison. I am the 4-H data management specialist for the state of Indiana. I manage the database systems. So for enrollment, our 4-H online system, and then the other two sister systems that we use for fair and for record keeping purposes. That is my primary role with the state office. I also help with other various activities throughout the office. I help with CDEs, I help with state fair, I help with other activities like Tony mentioned, Roundup. I also help with 4-H Academy and Leadership Summit and any hands-on deck type of activities that we offer to our youth and volunteers.
Great. You mentioned that you work with 4-H Online and two other programs. What are those other programs you work with for our state?
Two sister systems to 4-H Online talk to each other. I work with Fair Entry. That is our other system that all 92 counties use to help manage their fairs throughout the year. So kids, and they enroll in 4-H Online at the beginning of the year to say that I am going to sign up for projects, sewing, foods, and computer science. And then when they work on those projects throughout the year, and then when it's time for their county fair, if they're going to exhibit any of those projects at the county fair, they then go into our Fair Entry system to sign up specifically for those projects. So like if they're signing up for sewing, they could go, and if they're a third grader, they're going to go in, they're going to sign up that they are bringing a skirt or whatever the project is for that year, more specifically. And then this program then helps counties be able to manage how they judge those projects, and they can print all kinds of reports from that system to help them manage their fair. So I help provide that support for all 92 counties so they can use that system. And then the record book system, that's a new system that we kind of rolled out last year, and we're still working with that, but that then will help youth tell their story. They'll be able to go into that system, all their information on 4-H Online and any of their achievements in Fair Entry will be brought over to that system so they can record each year what they have accomplished through the year. They can also go in and put in any kind of other trips that they went on or any community service activities that they've participated in, and it helps keep a yearly record of what they've accomplished each year in 4-H.
Do all these three systems talk to each other? They share information?
Yes, they do. They have a single login information that the families can go in, one login, and gets them into all three systems.
Awesome. I mean, data management is something our youth have learned to do. They do a lot on computer. So this is a great way for them to continue to develop those skills. I like that. So you, with these programs, how do you interact with the county 4-H educators? I know I send you questions and my office staff all the time, and I'm sure all 92 counties do, but how else do you interact with volunteers or youth throughout the year?
I primarily work with educators and support staff. That is my primary role because I provide that support, because then they provide the support on how to use those systems to their volunteers and their families. But then one of the perks to my job too is because I also mentioned that I helped with CDEs and things like that. So I do get to interact with volunteers and youth throughout the year at those various types of events. I do a lot of behind the scenes work when I do CDEs. I do a lot of the tabulation, and then like state fair, I do, again, a lot of behind the scenes on working with 4-H Online to make sure it talks to their state fair entry system. And also I run a couple other events during state fair like Rabbit Ambassador. So then again, I'm running the tabulation for those types of events. But again, I still get to interact with volunteers and youth. And also with kind of backing up to the fair entry system, I do get a lot of feedback from volunteers, because with the fair entry system, yes, the support staff and the educators have the main control over that system, but it takes volunteers. It takes volunteers to really help get that system going. So they actually can have permission to go in and help manage that system. And I get feedback from them because, again, they're the ones a lot of times working directly with that system. And I like to get feedback from them so we know what we need to improve on and what I can send on to the development team to get accomplished.
Which I know our families and our office do appreciate what you and Tony both do with those systems and the quick responses and the help. We all appreciate that to keep things moving forward. So what is your vision? What do you see the Indiana 4-H program in the next few years?
I piggyback off of Tony's answer a little bit, because I grew up in a very traditional 4-H program. I showed livestock. It was very ag driven for me, but being the data manager, it's exciting to see. So I see what goes into the system. I see these new programs, these new projects activities that kids are signing up for. And I think that's really important to bring us into the future. Again, I grew up in the very traditional sense, and we have to still honor those traditions like Tony had mentioned, but moving forward and bringing in new programs is going to help us continue to the future. And I think the educators are doing, and our state staff are doing an awesome job at bringing in those new programs.
I would definitely agree. Some of the programs that come out of your state office with all the specialists are really great to see, the variety that reach out to different audiences, new audiences. As an educator, I really appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Yes.
So to wrap up your section, Kara, who would you like to have dinner with, a famous person from history or still alive?
I will admit, this was the question that I didn't know how to answer. But thinking off the top of my head, I'd say to tap into another question, one of my hobbies is I love to cook. And so I think I would want to have dinner with Julia Childs. I think that would be an interesting experience. I actually have read a book about her life, and it was very interesting to me. And like I said, I love to cook. And so I think that would be a very fun dinner to have with her.
I would agree. I think on the previous podcast, Zia Mara may have said that was one of her top choices also. I think it was, she chose somebody who can cook. She was talking about some different people. So that is awesome. Thank you, Kara.
Yeah.
Our next specialist we're going to talk to is Rachel Hazelby. If you want to go ahead and introduce and talk about your area that you work with, the Indiana State 4-H program.
I am really excited to be here. So I am the program specialist for computer science. My job is basically to come up with programs and interact with and get people excited about computer science and technology. That's kind of the short version of what I do. I helped to do that, I guess. I helped with the Teens as Teachers last year. And we also had a hackathon last spring, which 100% online and turned out very cool. We did some things with Minecraft and rebuilding the state fair, and helped with 4-H Academy. We had a computer science track. And right now we're running an online Spark Club called Coding Comrades. Tippecanoe County and myself are running that, but it's a statewide program. And it is really, really cool. The kids are working with their parents to learn game design. And then we're going to take what we're learning from that, turn it into a program to teach volunteers how to teach computer science.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. You mentioned a hackathon that you did with the Minecraft and State Fair. Can you talk about that a little more in detail?
About this time last year, Tony says, "Hey, Rachel, have you ever heard of a hackathon?" And I said, "Yes, and I want to host one." But what a hackathon isn't as scary as it sounds. You know, as soon as you think hacker, you think somebody's going to break into the Pentagon. We're not doing that in 4-H. What we're doing instead is taking a problem, and we created 5 problems for our hackathon, and basically like expanded story problems and say, here is your problem. Figure out a way using computers, using technology to solve this problem. We were going to have an in-person one. We had some students at Purdue who were going to help me, who were volunteering to help run this and help guide these youth to do this. And then, of course, that was very clearly not going to be an option. So we decided to, last spring, hold this hackathon together online. And so we did this whole online hackathon in this very short amount of time. And it turned out really, really great. We had about 80 youth sign up, not quite that many completed it. And it was open to every kid in the state, every youth in the state, middle through high school. So we had several kids who'd never had any interaction with 4-H have a positive experience and learn a little bit about what we do and learn a little bit about computer science. Now, it wasn't a traditional hackathon in that there wasn't a lot of teaching. Back in April, anybody who knew anything about technology was super busy working with their companies, tracking data and figuring out how logistics on where their employees were going to be and how they were going to do things and all of that. So I couldn't get anybody who understood technology to really, really support me. Each of the youth who took part had to find their own mentor, which usually ended up being their technology teacher at school. It worked out pretty well, and we got some really fabulous projects out of it. It was really neat and really fun.
Seems like a lot of the activities you do, programming with hackathon and computers and technology, are some of the non-traditional, not that like Kara and Tony had mentioned earlier, that what they see as a future of 4-H, that this is some of where we're going.
Yes, I feel like everything Tony said. I also, like Kara, grew up in 4-H, and my experience might not have been quite as traditional. I tended to gravitate to the horse and pony stuff. It was still very agriculture related. As an adult, 4-H is a very different thing now. And yes, those kids still have a place, and my kids are part of that section of 4-H, but they also expand their knowledge and learn about other things and be part of other things. And I think that's really awesome. And I think we're bringing in new kids who maybe have no interest in agriculture, do have interest in computer science or STEM of some sort. And I'm very excited about that. I think it's really awesome.
That is awesome. I would agree to bring in those different audiences. Even like you said, some of the traditional kids do enjoy these other activities, a new way to expand their knowledge, learn and use it in a different way than they thought they would. That's great. How else do you interact with our 4-H educators or volunteers or even youth in the counties?
Well, like I said, right now I am interacting with youth in the counties through this Coding Comrades online spark plug. Every Tuesday and Thursday I get on and I code with these middle school kids all over the state. And I put them all on a map like last week, and they literally are from the top to the bottom of the state. And they are so much fun and don't get to work with youth enough. Of course, I also taught teens as teachers last year and a little bit with 4-H Academy. So I get to do that with youth. In terms of interacting with adults, work really hard on creating classes, whether they're just 100% online or whether they're interactive, to teach them how to teach computer science, because that's a really, really scary thing for a lot of people. And because I think as adults, we tend to look at computers as something that's very, very breakable. And as soon as you start messing with it, everything's going to literally explode. That is almost never the case. I have bricked, and that's what you call it, if you completely trash a computer. I have done that twice in my life. And both of them involved spilling things on top of the computer. It was nothing I did in terms of coding. It's really hard to break a computer just by using it. So I think that's really scary for a lot of adults. And also it's kind of scary because they don't want to act like they don't know what they're doing. Quite frankly, the kids already know that we don't know what we're doing when it comes to coding. They already know that. They walk in there knowing that. They just want access to the technology and a little guidance. And that's what we really have to teach our adult volunteers and our staff, is that it's okay to say, I don't know, let's figure it out together. And that's what I get to do. And I think that's fun.
Thank you. And with this technology, you mentioned you're able to reach more kids throughout the state. And I think that's a great thing that we are able to move outside of our normal geographic area and reach a larger audience. And you're able to do that through a lot of your programming. Your last fun question, who would you like to have dinner with in history?
Okay, this is a total geek answer. I would love to meet Ada Lovelace. And for all of the people who don't know who she is, which there's a lot of them, she invented computer programming. And I love to say this part. She was a debutante. She was the girl in the fancy dress who looked like she was going to prom every single day. She was Lord Byron's daughter. She went to some fancy party and she met some guy named Charles Babbage and started talking to him. And he was talking about his computational engine and how he was going to change the world with this thing. He wasn't anywhere close to changing the world with it. She took a look at it and looked at all of it and said, you could do all of these things with it, and wrote them all down and quite literally wrote the first computer program. It didn't get run for like another 30 or 40 years. She was the mother of computer science. And I would love to sit down and chat with her and talk to her, because she was a very cool lady.
That is awesome. I did not know that fact. That is really great to learn. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you for joining us today. I appreciate talking with you and learning more about your specialty area.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we are going to now have Danielle Sands talk about herself and what her program area specialty is in the state 4-H office.
Hi, Julia. Thanks for having me today. My name is Danielle Sands. I'm the Extension Specialist for Engineering and Technology. Things that I bring to the 4-H state office are all about that. Any kind of programming dealing with building, design, using technology to do that work. So for example, some of the programs that I lead are the Fluid Power Challenge in the wintertime, where youth build a device to basically they build an arm and a rotator to move a block to a different part of a layout. So they get to learn about hydraulics and pneumatics at that program. Robotics, each spring we try to have a state contest. Those are the two big ones that I started doing when I became a 4-H state staff member. We've added a lot of experience 4-H events because rather than bringing youth to campus, which is our main goal to get them to learn about Purdue and all that it has to offer, we want to teach youth about other subject areas around the state. We've been trying to do environmental science activities such as a sustainable ag program in Montgomery County. We've launched an engineering design program that will be held somewhere around central Indiana, so youth can do a Rube Goldberg type machine. We've also been teaching about drones and GIS. So we've had a GIS event at the Indiana State Fairgrounds and brought drones in to show how they're used So just a variety of different areas that we want to teach youth about in engineering and design.
That is a great variety. I know I've had a couple teams that have attended the Fluid Power the same year, and they just absolutely love that. They came back and talked to our 4-H council and extension board, and they just really enjoyed that. And it helped to open up some more doors, I think, for some of them into future careers and where they could go.
You're exactly right. And it may be intimidating at first to think, oh, hydraulics and pneumatics, what's that about? And coming from a farm background, most equipment uses hydraulics. What is happening in those lines and how do you make the movement is really cool to see the youth discover. And I'm probably forgetting a lot of programs. Those are just the main ones on the top of my head. And also the maker movement. A lot of counties, 76 to be specific, have maker kits in the state. Inside those maker kits are 3D pens, coding robots, Legos, Strawbees, all the things that you probably already know about. But these tools basically put them in the hands of youth and they can tinker and create anything with them. And as Rachel said, some things for adults are intimidating, and this maker kit is really intimidating at first for adults because they don't have any idea how this stuff works. But once the youth start playing with them, the magic happens. So that's really cool for us to see as educators and state youth staff, is just the power of the possibilities for these youth.
I definitely would agree with those maker kits. I do use those with clubs. I've used them with our after school club, and you're right, it's just the magic when they get those Strawbees or they get those pens. It is just the best thing. We also use the Keva planks, and they love designing things with those.
Yeah,
Yes,
those are a lot of fun.
Those are some of the most exciting days. That, and then you also mentioned environmental science and sustainable ag in Montgomery County. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's two separate things. Sustainable ag has been a big topic here recently in the past few years. And an educator in Montgomery County is really passionate about that program. So we're trying to bring this to life and do a hands-on in-person event for youth to experience that. And we did have that topic at 4-H Academy a couple years ago. And while it was just launched at that event, and we really want to make it bigger to teach youth about sustainable ag. And then as far as environmental science programs go, specifically, this wasn't an Experience 4-H event that I hosted, but another state staff member had one at Goose Pond down in Greene County, talked about the bird migration and all the environmental activities that happen there. So there is an interest for it, and we're definitely trying to peak those topics in the state office for educators to play a part in. And recently we received some money from the Indiana Corn Marketing Council to purchase Enviroscapes. So these Enviroscapes are watershed, non-point source pollution, basically a kit, and it shows you different points that pollution can happen, but it's not necessarily easy to pinpoint which source is always the source of pollution. So hence non-point source. Basically, it all runs down through the watershed, but the point of the activity is to talk about mitigation and help youth figure out the best solution to stop the pollution. While those aren't in the engineering and technology realm of my expertise, we're definitely trying to put these in the hands of youth and educators because obviously the interest is out there. Great.
Thank you, Danielle. So how do you get to interact with our educators or the youth?
Well, I have a wonderful state science team, and that's comprised of 1 or 2 educators from each area. And basically, they're bringing topics to our meetings that are of interest to the educators in their area and the youth. And so we try to find a way to create curriculum and programs that really tailor to those. These educators are my basically frontline help that help us produce these activities throughout the state. So they're coming up with some ideas as well. More specifically, they also help with state events that we're doing, such as Experience 4-H, but also 4-H Academy, helping plan topics there, and then Teens as Teachers, etc. And I also forgot one very important topic that I work with is the Electric Committee. So we're doing great things with that committee right now. Basically, we're trying to turn the curriculum into hands-on interactive modules for the youth to complete online. And while we're starting with the advanced program, the point is that when the youth get done with this online system, they would have a non-credit certificate from Purdue showing that they went through this program, which is exciting. It's a resume builder, but it's also kind of giving them a head start to the training if they're interested in going into that career. Electric is changing so that the youth have more opportunities, ideas that they can run with through the 4-H program and their specifically exhibits, but also in their electric lifetime, they can learn about a bunch of different things outside of what we originally started teaching them.
Great. I did not know all the changes. I knew we had some changes with the electric project, but it's great to see new changes where the kids can continue, the youth take it on throughout their life to apply those skills.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You've talked about some new programs you have added over the years. Where else do you see the vision for the future of 4-H?
I know that going virtual wasn't the most ideal thing for us to have gone through this past spring and summer, but I feel like it's a blessing in disguise because we've been able to figure out how to do our 4-H programming virtually and reach more audiences than we have before. And I feel like when we go back to normal, whatever that may look like, we'll incorporate more virtual programming and try to do more outreach in that way to get more people interested in 4-H. When they become interested in 4-H and do the things that we have to offer, hopefully they will bring their friends and tell them, what cool things we have going on. So I definitely see us not away from the virtual platform.
Great. Yeah, I would agree. That's a great way. And we can also reach, if somebody doesn't have a specialty in a certain part of the state, you're able to reach out there and help those youth learn about different topics, everybody from the state offices or other educators. So thank you.
No problem.
Your fun question to wrap up. Who would you have dinner with and why?
So I would love to have dinner with Bill Nye just because of his passion for science. And I know I have a lot to learn. And I'm sure he would turn our whole dinner into a science experiment. I grew up watching him, and I just think it would be really cool to meet him and especially have dinner with him.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. We've had some different options of eating dinner with tonight for different reasons. We would learn a lot.
For sure. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. All right. We're going to wrap up with our last specialist, Courtney Steerwall. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your specialty?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be on the Clover call. My name is Courtney Steerwall, and I am the 4-H Animal Science Extension Specialist. So my title kind of gives away some of what I do. People often think of my program area as more of our traditional efforts, but I have some exciting things to share with you about more than just the title and more than just beyond the surface. So my primary role is to work with Tony on the career development events throughout the year. So as he mentioned, our traditional livestock judging competitions, our horse judging, horse communications, which is a huge event that takes place primarily usually in the spring. We adapted it this year. They were actually in June, but those events actually have a lot of attraction from our youth who have horse experience and some that don't. So things like our public speaking, our demonstration contests through the horse program, as well as hippology. I also work with the meets competition, the poultry competition, livestock skillathon, and I'm here to assist however I can with those events. So throughout the year, we're often very busy with those events. One of the more primary roles in which you'll see me a part of is the Indiana State Fair. So my job there is to oversee all of the animal shows that take place. So throughout the year, I work alongside other staff to make sure that we are having the best opportunity and event for our youth to show off their animal projects and 4-H projects throughout that generally 17-day event that takes place. So I help make sure we have the staff to cover those events as we primarily are in charge of making sure those animals are properly identified, making sure that they're healthy, and making sure that it's the best experience that we can for our youth. I also assist with the 4-H animal science tracks during the 4-H Academy, which takes place in June. So I work with the vet school. I work with other specialists in the animal science departments here on campus to help make sure that we have something for everyone who has an interest in animal science, whether it be more the biological side or they specifically have an interest in working with small animals. That event pretty much covers the gamut of having something for every youth. that's primarily what I do, as well as helping to uncover needs and opportunities throughout the year with educators on just making sure that we have animal science related content throughout the year. So I work with educators to ensure that they have something to share with their volunteers as well as their youth in their counties to continue their education throughout the year.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. As it is important to continue education throughout the year, not just a few months of the year, but throughout the year. And that's what all of you guys are working on. And it's great to see that with those career development events. You talk about different life skills with that, where they do demos or public speaking. You want to elaborate a little more on some of those?
Those events are fundamental for a lot of those youth in developing those skills. Oftentimes, they might get the rep of being the competition, but it's more about those skills that are leading up to that event. So they are working throughout the year to develop, like you mentioned, communication skills, leadership skills, evaluation skills, problem solving in general. All of those skills are a huge part of what they do. And if you survey a lot of our youth after they've been a part of that process, the number one thing they're going to come back to you with is their ability to, again, like I mentioned, not only problem solve, but also communicate, which is huge in the workforce as they're looking to fill those positions that are out there. Our youth are going to be able to fill those positions because they have that real life experience that they can relate to. And a lot of times, if they're actively involved in school, they may not have time to have a traditional job after school. So these skills are truly filling the void for some of those developmental processes that are going to make them at the top of the applicant pool when it comes to finding their careers or even their future college that they choose as well. So it just helps to make them continue to make them, some of the top youth that are going to be out there for our future leadership.
You're exactly right, Courtney. I mean, these events do hold a lot of that you've all talked about, provide different life skills and different aspects that the youth don't necessarily see until they're beyond that event, that they're in college, that they're in their career. And you look back at your 4-H, if you were in 4-H or other career development events, you see how those events did help you and shape you to become who you are.
Yeah. And I, on that note, with my specialty, I will say this, I say this is going to be someday on my tombstone, but we are so often driven to the competition, but the competition does not equal the completion of what they're trying to do. So I want people, as we think about our animal projects, and we do think of them in the traditional sense, that animal is merely the teaching tool. So all of those things that we talked about for career development, those are highly important, and those skills are what they develop with their animal projects as well. So it's the care for a living, breathing object. It's the mission and the challenges that go into that. That's what they're developing. They may get a blue ribbon, they may get a purple banner, but that's not what the prize should be on. We are building blue ribbon kids, and that's what we have to focus on. So I just have to say that, because we oftentimes get so wrapped in the competition and how much money someone may traditionally spend on a project. But at the end of the day, those skills that we are building should be more emphasized on building those kids and their character than what that animal project looks like. So I just have to say that, because I think it all relates, and it is important as we focus and move forward in our program.
I agree with you. And that goes through all the projects, the completion, the learning, the process to get to the end, not necessarily that competition. You want to learn from what you did in the past and move forward. And that's a lot. So thank you, Courtney, with talking about that. You mentioned somehow you interact with educators. Do you have the opportunity to interact with our volunteers or youth directly?
Through our programs like Teens as Teachers, I have direct contact. Like Rachel said, one of the things being in state staff, I was a former educator, so I had more hands-on contact. And I will say that, that's one thing I do miss, is the almost daily interaction with the youth. But I really embrace and truly enjoy the time that I do get to spend working on those, different events throughout the year where we do have youth, whether it be Academy or Teens as Teachers or just at the state fair, working with those youth in general. But my role, I do, as Kara does, as we talked about with Tony as well, I'm here to help aid and support in the 4-H animal science programming. So I spend a lot of time just daily having conversation about various animal project expectations, guidelines, etc. I work with counties to ensure that everything is being, all of their projects are being inclusive and doing what they can to make sure they're a safe and, awesome experience for all. So I work with educators, volunteers, and even county office staff to ensure that's happening throughout the year.
Thank you, Courtney. Another question, where do you see the vision of Indiana 4-H in the future? I'm kind of the cleanup crumbs here, but I really truly am on point with what Danielle was saying, and that, we've been dealt a hand of cards this year that nobody could have predicted. And we were working through to get through whatever this next life is that we're looking at. But we have to embrace what we've experienced. This opportunity to virtualize has allowed us to open so many more doors than we traditionally would have. And our goal, as with any organization, is to remain relevant. And in order to do so, we have to reach new audiences. We embrace our traditional efforts. Those are always going to be there. We're always going to have the fan club that truly builds us up and supports us through that process. But we have to make sure that while doing that, we are thinking of this future and what that is. And the future's now. In the past, we've been dubbed as the best kept secret. Well, if we're the best kept secret, now's our chance to really shine and to share what that secret is. And I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that. And I think we can only continue to build on that momentum and just remain relevant and move forward, embrace the change. Everybody can jump on the train because there truly is something for everybody in our organization. And we just have to get out there and help spread that. I do work with the agriculture programs, but we have so much more to offer and to relate. And we just want people to know that we are an open door. Come on in and we will find something for you to be a part of. And we have a great chance to do that right now. You're absolutely right, Courtney. And there have been so many great programming coming out this summer that the state staff has just done a great job preparing, getting out to the audience, to the extension, to the youth. It has been hard work on everybody's end, and we've been very appreciative of how you've reached out in new ways and try to be inclusive of everybody, which is very important. So thank you, Courtney. Your fun question, who would you have dinner with and why? This is a hard question because I could sit here and think of several people. First of all, family members from the past who I hear stories of, but I don't really know them as a person, and I might have dinner with them and change my mind. I'm not sure. I have one that's very random that comes to mind, and that is the unsinkable Molly Brown. Why her? Well, I think the title within itself just is someone that I'd want to meet. And a lot of people don't realize why she was called the unsinkable. Obviously, she didn't sink, but she was a proponent during that situation for not only taking leadership and making sure people were safe to evacuate. She had an oar in her hand. She was oaring those waters, and I'm sure it was cold. And I mean, a woman like that's a woman worth meeting, in my opinion. But she also was adamant about bringing the lifeboat back and trying to find as many survivors as possible. So she didn't give up. And with that being said, it depends on what source you read as to whether they were successful in actually evacuating more people or not. But the idea there is that she wasn't just thinking of herself. She wanted to, in that situation, save as many people. And if you think about it, I mean, I can't even imagine being in that scenario, but trying to be like, okay, I'm safe, but then to think we got to go back and get more people is just a big thing. And that's a part of who I am. And just, I care for people and I'm for the people and that sort of thing. But she's someone that not only did, she survived that, then she actually went and aided and helped on the front lines and ensuring that in the World War I, that the French soldiers as well as the United States soldiers had resources and were cared for. And, she just had this, I can't even think of the word, but this knack about her to be a bigger than life character, but in a good way. She used her resources. She didn't give up. She stood for what she wanted. And I think anybody like that is someone worth looking into and having dinner with. And I think having dinner with Molly Brown would be a very remarkable experience.
Not on the Titanic, though.
No, these have been some great ideas of who to have dinner with. So thank you for all sharing. We've all learned today that we have a gamut of programming available in the state office, from animal science to computer science, data management, the non-animal projects, career development events, engineering technology. There's a great variety of ways that we can learn and develop skills that youth can throughout Indiana 4-H. And it comes down to our specialists of the state office, and we really appreciate everything that all of you do, those that are on our call today and that were on the podcast number 2. So I appreciate you all for coming on today, talking about your program area. And it was a true pleasure to speak with each of you today, to really learn. I've learned a little more about each of what you do. As an educator, I do know the basics, but it's great to always continue to hear directly from you. So I appreciate and thank you for being here with us today.
Interested in learning more about Indiana 4-H? We invite you to visit our website, extension.purdue.edu/4H, or contact your local Purdue Extension office and ask for the 4-H Youth Development Extension Educator. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss an episode. We look forward to joining you again on the next Indiana 4-H Clover Call.